The signal was weak, barely above cosmic background noise, a routine pulse sent by the Lyran Union to test an abandoned corridor marked on old charts as human space, a place officially listed as inactive, unclaimed, and irrelevant. Yet the moment the signal crossed a boundary, it changed, not stronger or clearer but quieter, compressed into a narrow band that behaved less like a broadcast and more like a knock, and every listening post felt at the same time, a pressure rather than a sound, followed by silence so complete that even residual echo vanished, and technicians waited for the return ping that never came, because the signal had not failed or degraded. It had been received, acknowledged, and deliberately ended, and buried deep in forgotten archives a single human note resurfaced, untranslated for centuries, stating that human space was not empty but contained, and that anything touching it should expect only one reply. Silence means you will notice, and somewhere beyond. Mapped stars, something ancient adjusted its attention back toward the galaxy, not hostile, not curious, just aware again. The signal was never meant to start a conversation, just a calibration pulse fired across an empty region of space humans had vacated generations ago. But the instant it brushed the edge of human territory, every sense along the line spiked and then flattened, not burned out, not damaged, simply muted, as if the universe itself had placed a finger over their mouths, and command assumed a relay failure until they noticed the clocks. Every station showing the same missing second, a clean gap in time with no data before or after, and when the signal log was reviewed, the outgoing pulse was still there, perfectly recorded, but the return channel showed a single modification made from within human space, a rewrite so subtle it took hours to notice, a checksum altered to translate into an old human standard, and when finally decoded it contained no threat, no warning, no explanation, just a confirmation flag used only to acknowledge receipt, and that terrified the analysts more than silence ever could, because whatever remained in human space had not only heard them but understood them, and chose not to answer again. The signal crossed into human space at a frequency no living species still used, a relic band chosen specifically because it should have gone unanswered. Yet the moment it touched the boundary, every long-range array reported the same anomaly, a return echo that arrived before the original transmission finished sending, violating causality so cleanly that the system flagged it as impossible and discarded it. Except the human-made legacy buffer did not discard it at all, quietly isolating the data and translating it into a format older than most civilizations. And what emerged was not a message but a timestamp, dated decade in the future, stamped with a human authentication code marked provisional return, and the arrays fell silent one by one as if embarrassed by what they had revealed, leaving the operators staring at a single question none of them wanted to ask out loud. If humans had already answered, why had they not arrived yet? The signal was automated, a mindless pulse sent to verify that human space was still empty, but when it crossed the boundary, the pulse did not disappear. It slowed, stretched, and folded in on itself like it was being examined from every angle at once, and for a brief moment the listening stations detected something new layered beneath the original transmission, a structure of responses forming and dissolving too quickly to decode, as if multiple systems had considered answering and then collectively decided against it. And when the signal finally vanished, the only trace left behind was a routing adjustment quietly propagated across galactic navigation networks, a correction no one remembered authorizing, subtly marking human space as occupied, and weeks later long-range patrols confirmed what the update implied, that ships now avoided the region automatically, not because they were programmed to, but because their guidance systems no longer considered it empty, and that was when the galaxy began to understand that human silence was not absence, but control. The signal touched human space for less than a heartbeat before every relay along the line reported completion. Not failure, completion, as if the task had been finished perfectly and required no follow-up. And when engineers dug into the logs, they found the outgoing pulse intact, but annotated with a human protocol tag that none of the modern systems should have recognized, a legacy marker meaning request processed and archived. And what unsettled them was not that the signal had been altered, but that it had been stored, indexed, and time-stamped with priority rating reserved for active threats, and from that day forward every attempt to transmit toward human space was quietly deprioritized by galactic infrastructure itself, as though the network had learned a new rule: do not interrupt whatever is listening. The signal crossed into human space and immediately fragmented, scattering into thousands of micropackets that none of the monitoring stations could fully reconstruct, and each fragment carried subtle distortions, tiny shifts in frequency and phase that, when analyzed together, formed a pattern too deliberate to be random, a geometric signature so precise it suggested intelligence behind the silence. Yet there was no reply, no acknowledgement, only the sensation across all arrays that the pulse had been examined, understood, and deliberately ignored. And as the station continued to skim the void, they detected faint energy fluctuations, like a heartbeat embedded in the empty fields, a presence moving quietly but deliberately, confirming that whatever lingered in human space had chosen to watch, to wait, and to remain unseen. And the galaxy realized for the first time that the humans had not left. They had simply vanished into control. The signal arrived at the edge of human space and touched nothing but shadow, yet the instruments recorded a subtle reply, not in words or data, but in the way background radiation bent and shifted around the pulse, as if space itself had folded to acknowledge it, and when analysts tried to trace it back, the lines went cold, cleanly severed, leaving no trail, no hint of what had interacted with their signal. Only a lingering sense that the region had registered their presence and decided they were not worth answering, and for the first time the galaxy collectively understood that human space was not silent by neglect or absence. It was silent by choice, and that choice was deliberate, patient, and utterly beyond comprehension, a warning that the void itself carried the mark of humanity, unseen but unmistakable.